Hello, very beautiful community. Mr. Putin has done another Rocket Man show, so let's have a look at it. The Russians say they've successfully tested a nuclear-powered cruise missile called Burevestnik, and we can have a look at them talking about it. There is Putin on the left. There is Putin, and he's going to say a few things. There he's going to let Gerasimov speak. I'm not going to torture you with that. So I made a note of what they said. Putin said, experts were telling me that this was a noble cause, but that it's not realizable in the future. But now decisive tests have shown that we did it. It's a unique artifact which nobody in the world has. Then Gerasimov comes in, and as soon as he begins talking, Putin interrupts and corrects him to remind him that it's a nuclear-powered platform. And then Gerasimov goes on to say that the missile has completed horizontal and vertical and horizontal maneuvers successfully. And then Putin asks how many kilometers can it fly, and Gerasimov says 14,000. And how many hours can it be in the air, Putin asks, and Gerasimov says 15, but that's not even the upper limit. And then Putin says it'll be necessary to decide how to classify this type of armament, to determine the possible ways of employing this system, and to start preparing the infrastructure, our infrastructure, for the deployment of this weapon in our armed forces. Now, we don't actually know, I don't know that we know, at least, whether the Russians actually tested it, what their testing entailed. We don't know how far they solved the radioactivity problem that this weapon allegedly could be beset by. None of this is my expertise. So let me talk to you about the political implications of this. I mean, roughly what we just watched is an equivalent of this, which is actually a statement I made recently about my own rocket that I developed.
Hi, beautiful community. I'm falling behind in in views, and I've got to do something about it. So I'm hereby doing a press conference. This is a press conference, and I'm announcing a new rocket. And it's already performing a lot of horizontal and vertical maneuvers, and it can go like 14,000 million trillion kilometers. And I'm just putting out there because I know a lot of the other YouTube channels are getting many more views than me. So I'm just doing the press conference. Just happens to be now because, you know, it's actually got nothing to do with the views. But I'm doing it now just so everybody knows about my rocket and the horizontal and vertical maneuvers it can do. And it's just a really serious rocket.
So that, I think, sums up what Putin said there. But the trouble is that kind of infantile theater works. Before we say a bit more, let's have a look at Trump's response.
They know we have a nuclear submarine, the greatest in the world, right off their shores. So, I mean, it doesn't have to go 8,000 miles. And they're not playing games with us. We're not playing games with them either. And I don't think it's an appropriate thing for Putin to be saying either, by the way. He ought to get the war ended. A war that should have taken 1 week is now in its soon 4th year. That's what he ought to do instead of testing missiles.
So it is a central feature, and indeed that was the case before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, of Russian diplomacy, that they have to threaten nuclear war every time they think they'll benefit from it, knowing that the avoidance of nuclear war is a primary priority for the West that's going to outpace any other priority the West has. That's worked very successfully for the Russians during, over 3 years of full-scale war. When the invasion took place in Feb 2022, the immediate response to the Biden administration was, let's spend some time conceptualizing what Putin is about, We don't know why he is doing this. But let's also say that our first priority is to avoid escalation. Our second priority is to help Ukraine. And these priorities danced with one another in various kinds of ways during the war, but the avoidance of nuclear escalation always remained primary. Now, the trouble, of course, is that appeasing Putin also leads to nuclear escalation. Because it enables and facilitates Russian aggression. So there aren't actually escalation-free solutions that were available to the West in Feb 2022. You actually could get nuclear escalation in both directions. If you don't help Ukraine, you're going to get nuclear escalation. If you help Ukraine, you're going to get nuclear escalation. Now, Trump is spectacularly erratic for all kinds of reasons we've endlessly discussed. But he's got a very small number of beliefs he's inherited from the 1980s. And one of them we often talk about, that's tariffs. But another is actually nuclear war. Trump's afraid of nuclear war. Trump's seriously concerned about nuclear war, seriously concerned about the avoidance of nuclear war. And I think that's an important observation about him. And that's going to mean that Putin's rocket threats are unlikely to be entirely useless. What you have to understand about them is that they are a certain kind of tool of post-truth manipulation. And once you begin to understand that properly, you see that the very idea of China saying, well, hang on, let's distinguish what the Russians are saying from what their actual red lines are by carefully analyzing what they're saying and seeing what it implies between the lines about the truth about their red lines. The problem with that is that Russian red line rhetoric isn't just an exaggeration of Russia's red lines or a falsification even of Russia's red lines. It's a manipulation of a post-truth kind of discourse about red lines. The Russians deliberately introduce ambiguity in the way they speak about this. They deliberately introduce post-truth manipulation. They say one thing is a red line on a Tuesday, another thing is a red line on a Thursday. They introduce a kind of element of monarchical secrecy into this. That's to say, they bring it about that people lower down in the regime have no idea what's going on and actually often end up worrying that the people at the top are going to start a nuclear war when the people at the top aren't remotely thinking about starting a nuclear war. And, of course, a lot of this theater is also for domestic consumption, to make Russia look mighty and impressive in the face of an allegedly belligerent West. Now, I just want to introduce a very small side note, just because we're chatting casually. It's something I thought about today in relation to all the different things we've said about Trump's deference to Putin. We've talked about Trump's narcissistic dependence of Putin. We've talked about Trump's ideological overlap with Putin. But one thing that's very interesting is that Trump likes how big Russia is. And you might say, come on, he's not two. Well, he is two. I mean, narcissists are certainly all below the age of 10 if they're serious narcissists in psychic development. So I think that Trump genuinely likes that Russia is big the way he likes gold. He just likes it. He doesn't need to further analyze this. And to understand why he likes that it's so big, you've got to look at his narcissism. To understand why he can't bring himself about to question his love of Russia's bigness, you have to look at the interaction of his narcissism with his neurodiversity, because for him, Russia is big and it's big and it's big, and he's really fixed with that. He's not going to go anywhere. It's just not going to go anywhere. It's just fixed. I like gold. I like big. Russia is big. I like Russia. And what I wanted to say is that we actually shouldn't underestimate that as one of sort of 10, 20 things in Trump's mind that are genuinely having a policy impact. He just likes the size. I mean, he just likes the size. Now, back on topic. To understand properly, I think, what I've just said about the way nuclear rhetoric is a tool of post-truth manipulation by the Putin regime, in case you haven't seen it, I'm going to stick here a 4 or 5 minute video about the design of Russia's nuclear blackmail. Don't watch it again if you've seen it, but if you haven't, have a go at a click. And then that video will actually lead to a bigger rant about the men with ideas behind Putin's nuclear blackmail. Okay, just less than 2 cents today, but I think that's enough. Lots of love. Talk soon.